Good morning, and thanks very much for joining me in this short discussion on research. My name is Sathyajith Mathew from the University of Agder, Norway. Let us start this chat by looking into the definition of research. What exactly is research? There are many ways in which research can be defined. But it is basically a systematic work undertaken to increase our knowledge by collecting, organizing, analyzing information, and ultimately it increases our understanding on a specific area. It's quite interesting, isn't it? If this is the definition of research, we all are doing research in our everyday life. For example, if you want to find out the best masala dosa available in a town, we do a small research. We ask different people, get their opinion, process it, and even we may do some small experiment by trying some of these shops. And finally, we come to a conclusion. Okay, this is where it is available. We can find many examples in our life where we do research to find out or come to some conclusions which is useful. These are informal way of doing research. And in this discussion, let us focus on the formal research methods and approaches. There are different types of research. If you search, you can find out a number of classifications for research. But for this study, let us focus on these major three types. One is industrial research, academic research, and finally, PhD research. The objective, the methods, the way in which it is being done are entirely different for all these three categories. For example, in case of industrial research, our objective is to develop a product or service which can be translated into business. I was working with a multinational industry in a research project, and they're not bothered about research papers, publications. What they wanted is patent, so that it can be converted into a product which can be, it can enhance their business. So this is how the industries, companies look at the research. Whereas the academic research, whether if it is done in a group, as in a research organization, or done individually, which is a PhD research, the approach could be different. And especially for PhD research, it should be very focused and time-bound, because you have a stipulated years within which you have to complete your PhD and carry on with your career. So these are the three ways in which the research can be broadly classified. As I said, there are other ways as well. And this is one way to look at it. Now, when a new student join our group for PhD, I would tell them that research is basically like cooking a healthy and delicious dish. What do we need for cooking a good dish? To start with, we need fresh and good raw materials. For a research, we should have the right research topic to start with. Then we have to add the right amount of ingredients to that dish, masalas. It should be cooked for the right cooking time. Once it is cooked, it should be nicely presented and, of course, served to the right group of people. Similarly, in research, you have to start with the right topic, use the right tools, methods, analysis to make it deeper and attractive. Then the area on which we are working on should be comprehensively covered within the time limits, and it should be nicely presented through thesis and research papers, served to journals, academic conferences. So it is just like making a nice, delicious dish. And let us look at the different steps involved in detail, starting from choosing the research area. The first thing in choosing a research area for your academic research is that that area should be interesting to you. Whatever may be the situation, never try to work on a topic on which you do not have any interest. Focus or try to work on your area of interest. And it is good to work on an emerging and hot topic. For example, we all know that right now the emerging topic is, or the hot topic is, Corona. And there are a number of research papers, research projects which are being implemented, supported to work on this specific aspect. So if you choose a very hot area or emerging area, the chances of getting funding and scholarship could be quite high. I'll tell you an example. One of my colleagues recently published a paper on application of or use of fuel cells during in hospitals during the Corona time. The work is nowhere connected to Corona, but he placed it in the right context so that the funding and other things can be attracted. So, hot topic. Definitely, the area on which that you work should be ethical. Now, once you have decided a broad area to work on, then you have to narrow down to specific objectives and research questions. For that, you have to review the literature or review the research done by previous researchers to identify the state of art. Because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to see what exactly is done in that area and from where exactly we should take it forward. These days, we have a lot of resources from where we can extract this information. For example, all the leading publishers have a number of journals. Take the case of Science, Technology and Medicine, STM. We have Elsevier with Science Direct, Springer, IEEE. There are a lot of other resources where the papers or previous researcher done in that particular area has been stored and can be accessed. Now, for social science research, SSRN can be a good place where we can look for such research literature. Now, once you have this information, then we have to identify the research gap in that area. Sometimes it may not, these information or these journals could be a bit expensive, and you may not be able to buy it, or you may not have access to these journals in your library. In that case, what you can do is you can identify the paper through abstract search in these resources, then directly try to write to the authors and ask them to send that paper so that you can read it and include it in your research review. And I'm quite sure all the researchers will be very happy to share their article if someone is interested in it. So that's one way to get the research literature if you are constrained with funding. Now, even Google Scholar has got a very big database or resource stored on various areas of research. You can find a number of other resources as well. Now, one thing that you have to be sure when you decide the specific objectives on which you are trying to work is that it should be manageable within the time limits. We are very much interested to work on a lot of things, but for a PhD research, you should be very careful in choosing the right level of quantity, or right level of research breadth, so that it can be finished within the stipulated or anticipated time. Another major thing is that always expect challenges on the way. You can have a lot of challenging situations in between. For example, if you are working on a specific topic on which you require some data, sometimes at some point this data may not be available for you. So you should have a backup plan to overcome these type of challenges, which can be anticipated. Now, once you have specifically chosen the topic on which you want to work, now you have to choose, okay, where should I do my research? Choosing the right research organization or institute. How do you do that? Definitely, the place which you are going to do your work should have facilities for it. This is very important for science research, where you require a lot of lab facilities. And if you go to a place where we do not have it, you can have trouble in between. And there should be expert faculty to guide you. And another thing that you can look into is whether this organization has projects related to your area, so that you can be sure that your research journey over a couple of years can be quite smooth. And it is always advisable to have a word with some of the senior researchers or senior PhD students who are working there, and ask them, how is the institute? And again, how is the supervisor? Is he manageable? It is good to have a word with your seniors. Now, when you look at the institutes, there are a lot of ranking. For example, all the universities are ranked by either some of the leading, there are a lot of ranking agencies. Some of the leading ranking organizations, agencies are, rankings are Time Higher Education ranking and QS ranking that is given by topuniversities.com. So if you go to these sites and search for a particular organization, you can have some feeling on the academic standing of that particular university. This is very important for those who are trying to do research outside India, especially in international universities. So this can be an indication. Always, it is not a very reliable what you call yardstick, but you'll get some idea on the academic standing of that particular organization. Now coming to the use of right tools in research. The tool to be used for research depends upon your area of research. For example, it can be either quantitative or qualitative data that you require. A good example is social science research, where you have surveys. And think about this example. For example, you are doing a research on food, and a new recipe has been developed. So there are two ways to look at or assess the new finding or new recipe. Number one, quantitatively, you can define or quantify the nutrient contents of the different ingredients and the whole food as such. Or qualitatively, you can measure its taste by different, as reported by different people. So for the same problem, you have option to look it into a quantitative way as well as qualitative way. And always, when you have data, do some systematic analysis, statistical analysis, because to rule out any chances of bias. And these days, there are a lot of computational tools that can be used for such analysis. You don't have to do it on your calculators. Computer models are available. Now, try to use some of the latest techniques in the trade. For example, these days, artificial intelligence is applied in every field, in forecasting, time series analysis. So try to use some of these strong tools so that your research will be very attractive, and it will be well received by journals and other publication agencies. So using the right tool for the research. Now, once you have done your research, you got some result, you have that analysis, now you would like to publish it. Because that is one of the measure, number of publications from a research or a PhD topic is one of the measure of its quality. So we would like to publish as much as possible from our research or PhD work. And first thing that you have to do is we have to choose the right journal or conference. These days, you can find a lot of fake journals. I would say it is fake journals. International Journal of anything, which will charge you money to get your paper published. They call it as open access publishing way, publishing model. There are good open access journals operated by famous or reputed publishers. But along with it, there are a number of fake journals available. You send anything, you pay the money, they'll publish it. So don't get trapped into that. Because if you prepare your CV and if you put some of these fake, these papers published in these fake journals, then it will rather degrade your chances or CV than enriching it. So be careful. When you prepare the paper, carefully go through all the guidelines and prepare your paper accordingly so that the reviewing time can be minimized. One of the main problem is some journals take a lot of time to complete the review. I remember still one of my first papers sent to a journal took 2 years to be reviewed and published. So if you do it systematically right from the beginning, depending upon the direction given by the journal, then it could be easier and faster. And how do you draft your paper? Sometimes we all tend to make a paper much complicated. Think that you know the work very well because you have done it. And this has to be read by a person who may be expert in this area, but not have done this specific work. So use very straight and simple way of presentation. Sometimes we may feel that using very simple language and writing it in a very simple way is not that good, because people may think that the paper is not quite high standard. No, it is your result that matters, but use straight and simple way of presentation. Now, when you write your paper, always it is good to give it to some of your friends and ask them to have a look. Just ask them to read it, because many mistakes that we may not be able to identify even during repeated reading can be pointed out by a person or another person or some of your friends. And very importantly, or most importantly, don't get disappointed with rejections. It is quite normal that you send your paper and it gets rejected. Don't get disappointed. I'll tell you one example. This also is during my early PhD days. I sent a paper to a journal which was having moderate level of standard, and that paper was rejected. So I was a bit unhappy, and I thought, okay, anyway, it is rejected. Let me send it to a high impact journal. So I sent it to another journal, and surprisingly, it was accepted without much changes. So rejection is quite a part of the game, and don't get disheartened. Keep on modifying it, send it to different journals. Now, how do you identify a good journal? There are different ways to do it. One way is to look at the journal impact factor. And the most reliable impact factor, or the impact factor, should be from creative. That is here, which is shown here. And again, I'll tell you, there are these, when we have this open access scam by different people coming up with journals, paid journals, and people started looking at the impact factor to choose the journal. These people started coming up with fake impact factors. So impact factor should be the authentic one. This is the most authentic way of looking at the impact factor. And every year, the journal impact factor has been published by this organization. You can see the number here. It depends upon the number of citations that the paper has, the papers published in the journal has. Now you can see that you have journals ranging from, say, 500 impact factor to journals ranging to, say, a fraction of 0.5 or 0.75 impact factor. It depends your area. Most of these high impact factor journals are from medicine and related fields. So what I mean to say is that the impact factor is a good measure to judge the quality of the journal. Now, you have completed your research. You are trying to write your thesis. There are different ways to present your thesis. And in the traditional way, we can do it: introduction, review of literature, materials and methods, result and discussion, conclusion. Or you can do it in the contemporary way, like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, focusing on each of your objective. Again, these days, universities started encouraging people to submit their thesis by compiling their publications. For example, I have published 3 papers from my thesis. So instead of writing it as a thesis, right from introduction to the result and discussion, I will just compile or bind all these research papers together. And at the beginning, I'll give a small introduction indicating or pointing that each paper is about this and published here, and the next one is here. So there's an introductory chapter which will point and correlate all these papers together. Otherwise, you don't have to write the complete thesis, except other than writing it fully, you compile or jointly submit your paper. That is being very commonly followed in many universities these days. Now, writing a thesis, I used to tell my group members, writing a thesis is just like telling a story. And we know every story should have a beginning. It should progress very well. It should be well connected. And finally, there should be a conclusion. So the whole thesis should have a continuity. And the reader should be able to understand what exactly you are trying to tell him. There should be a link between the chapters, for which it is good to have an introduction for each chapter. And at the end of the chapter, it is good to write what you have done in a very brief way, conclusion. And in that conclusion, give a link to the next chapter where you'll do the next step of your research. So by this, you have a smooth movement or development of your thesis. So there are different ways with which the thesis can be written, and different subject areas may demand different type of presentations as well. Now, as I said, in case of publishing in journals, you can present your results in conferences also. That also is a very good forum to publish your results quite fast. And there are a lot of fake conferences these days. Some people make it as a money-making business. So don't get trapped into that. You'll get a mail telling that you are invited as a keynote speaker of this conference. So you get excited. Okay, I'm called as a keynote speaker. And when you look at the conference, it is organized by a very flimsy body, and you pay an amount to be an invited speaker, keynote speaker for that conference. So beware, you have to choose the conferences very carefully. How do we assess the quality of or reliability of a conference? The best way to look at it is to check whether it is organized by an authorized body or professional body, IEEE, ASME, or any other professional bodies which has got a very good track record. Now, again, check how they publish their proceedings. Some of the good conferences has got contract with leading publishers to publish the proceedings of the conference. That's a good attraction for publishing a paper in a conference. And again, look at the people who are coming there. If there are very well-known names in your area, attend that conference. Definitely, it could be a good choice because it is a good opportunity to meet important people working in that area, interact with them, and maybe you can lay the foundation of your future career with that through postdoctoral or other research opportunities. Now, another thing is protecting the intellectual property rights. Because when you do research, you may come up with some innovations and inventions. And make sure that these are properly patented or copyrighted. There are different organizations doing it in different countries. For example, in India, it is Intellectual Property India. In US, it is USPTO. And internationally, we have an organization, WIPO, that is World Intellectual Property Organization, which can help us in patenting our or publishing our findings. Patenting is a bit painful process because it takes a long time to get a patent. It took at least 4 or 5 years for me to get 2 of the recent patents from USPTO. So you have to be very patient. Then it is a bit expensive as well. You have to appoint or entrust a patent attorney to draft it in a legal way to present the patent. But fortunately, there are funding available for preparing your patent if you approach, for example, in India, this Intellectual Property India. So it is very important to cover your or safeguard your intellectual findings. So this was a very short and casual chat on research. I was trying to tell you some of the things from my own experience and what I observed from my colleagues. And if you want to have any discussion further on it, you can contact me. This is my webpage, university homepage, where all my contact information are included. My email is here. My phone number is here, but it is a land phone, so you may have to spend a lot of money to call me if you are calling from India. And my office is here. So if you want to contact me, better contact me through this email address. Thanks again. Thank you very much for being with me for this short chat. Hope you enjoyed it and it is useful for you. Thank you and bye-bye.